Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's a Forbes sports writer, BBWAA member, and a best-selling author. Please welcome Phil Rogers to the program. Phil, it's great to have you on. How are you?
Thanks very much, John. Doing well.
So, Phil, let me ask you this to start. Have you ever booed a reader of your work?
No, I never have, but I've certainly been booed by a lot of readers, and I've learned the value of thick skin through the years for sure.
What do you think would happen if you did that?
Well, he'd be more likely to just tune me out and stop reading. I mean, I'm sure back in the old days when you got more than 140 characters and it was email, I had some exchanges, and when people would get angry, I would pretty much just go with, thanks for reading me. And, I think we agree to disagree, but thanks for reading me, and let it go at that. And, I think people appreciated the fact that I would let them vent, and they could call me an idiot. I wouldn't feel the need to call them an idiot in return.
How do you think this all applies then to the Baez and Lindor situation in New York? What was your reaction when you saw what they did?
Yeah, I guess I see it both ways. My initial reaction, knowing New York City fans, is just how stupid it is, and how, in my opinion, we're in an era where athletes athletes patronize fans. Every team, every city, the people say, "Oh, our fans are the best fans. This is the best city." A lot of times, the media and the fans patronize the players while they're there. "Oh, you're the greatest." And then as soon as they're out of town, people start telling bad stories about, "I always knew this and this," but they never said it. When the guy was in their market, and it's not really respect to me. It's a period of patronization, and it kind of goes both sides. And so it's surprising, when people are so openly non-patronizing, and it's far worse when it's a new guy, Javier Baez in New York, guy who just got there, versus somebody who's lived through some real stuff. So I thought it was really silly on his part. On the other side, it wasn't the middle finger those guys gave fans. It was the turn down thumb. And, I think there's different degrees of reaction and outrage. And, I was glad it was the turn down thumb, not the upturned middle finger.
Did they deserve the boost, Phil, based on their performance?
Probably, and it really starts, if you look at the whole team, with Lindor getting off to the bad start after signing the $300+ million contract. I'll say I do fantasy baseball and have for probably about 10 years. I was kind of a late adopter to it, but I enjoy it now. And one thing that when I'm drafting teams and thinking about them, that first year after a player changes and goes to a new team in free agency, more often than not, there's a little difficulty and drama and adjustment to it, and the guy's better in the second year. But, I think the Mets, when you look at the DeGrom injury, you look at them not having had Syndergaard as well. Then Lindor gets off to a bad start. I mean, it's just a lot of recipes for disappointment for this fan base that thought, "Oh, this is our year. We're going to be better than the Yankees. We're going to take over New York." And it hasn't happened. So I understand why the fans are disappointed. And given that it's the athlete's job to produce, I would say they probably have deserved it. Javi Baez is having an absolutely miserable season that he covers up by the fact he hits home runs. To me, he's gone from being this multi-talented guy that had all the potential in the world to he's kind of a modern version of Juan Uribe. Juan Uribe was a good fielder. He hit home runs, but he struck out a lot and he never walked. I mean, the strikeout walk ratio for Javier Baez is, in one word, disgraceful. He's gotten into terribly bad habits as his career's gone on. And people like Jim Hendry, who was the Cubs GM when he drafted him, and I think Theo Epstein, when he got to know him early in his tenure, would be really disappointed by his development as a player because he had the potential to be so much more, but he got caught up into the big plays and the long ball.
I'm surprised, and I saw this stat the other day, Phil. In the past 162 games for Baez, it's something like 200 plus strikeouts and only 20 plus walks. I mean, that's not sustainable to be a Major League Baseball player.
No, it isn't. And, you see there was that, I don't know if you'd be proper to call it a meme, but this video that went around a week ago of Javi swinging and missing, and literally he couldn't have hit this pitch with a canoe paddle. He missed so badly that it became a thing. And it's not the way you see professional big league ball players swing at the ball. And, he's had, I don't know, with the Cubs, he had a different hitting coach every year. That couldn't have been good for him. But he's had some smart people around him, I'm sure. And he's just gotten caught up in, instead of having a lot of games where you contribute little things, I think every game he goes into, he wants to be the star of the game. And it's a selfish approach, and unsustainable is the right word. And I will be very surprised if he doesn't get a harsh wake-up call when he hits free agency after the season. And it will have more to do with his performance than the thumbs down to the Mets fans. He's a guy that I think always expected $200 to $300 million. I think when Lindor got the deal a year ago, I think he thought, well, I can get a Lindor contract, but he hasn't performed and produced in the way that would make any team that eager to go out and make super big long-term commitments to him. So, he could be a one-year free agent guy that has to go out and reestablish himself with a good 2022 season, since 2021 is getting to the end and he's disappointed so badly.
How do you think he corrects these issues? I mean, I suggested back when he was with the Cubs with this strikeout to walk ratio that he should be demoted straight up. And a couple of people chided me and said, well, his WAR is high. He contributes defensively. He runs the bases well. What do you think he could do to become who he was before, be better than he is today?
I think it just takes a lot more self-awareness than he has and that he has shown. And, I don't know if it's getting a new voice around him that he will listen to that would help him. But, I think he's going to, as all free agent players are this winter, he's going to be judged by the market. And, he wouldn't be the first guy who, thought, everything about himself was great until he got judged by other people and then finds out, well, I've got to have to make some changes. If so, he's young enough to make changes and go back and use that potential. But I'm like you. I would point out in the Chicago Tribune from time to time or on blogs that when I was with the MLB.com, that the Cubs were their best when Javi Baez was the second baseman and Addison Russell was the shortstop. And unfortunately for Addison Russell, he's had a short career due to his off-the-field issues. But, people all just wanted to think, well, now Javi's a shortstop. He's destined to be the shortstop. Of course, they got to get rid of Addison Russell and move on. And it was kind of like it was just inevitable that he was going to be this Hall of Fame level shortstop because he made some nice tags. I mean, his great plays are terrific. His base running instincts, and defensively, some of the things he does, not other players do. But the other players that don't do those things make the routine plays better, and pretty much always did. And, I think he's just going to have to look at himself honestly and say, I got to go out and work to not make so many errors. And, in the biggest thing, I've got to change my approach at the plate and go back to working counts a little bit, hitting the ball. I mean, he's a lot like Sammy Sosa in terms of approach at the plate. And I only saw one guy that ever really got through to Sammy, and that was Don Baylor. And there was a short period of time after Sammy's MVP season in '98 when I think he actually was at his best. He was hitting balls to the opposite field. He was using the whole park, and he was running the bases hard. He was playing a better outfield. He had become a really good all-around player. And then he got back into the stuff with Barry Bonds, where they were huge rivals. And again, it was all about just hitting the home runs. And I think we saw the tail end of his career be disappointing and probably briefer than people thought it would be. And I see Javi heading to that same place if he doesn't, make a lasting change when he sits down and looks at his 2021 season and production. And you're right to point out that it's not that it came out of nowhere this year. He was, I would say, pretty much every year he was in Chicago, he was not as good of a player as he was the year before. And even though he's in an age where he should be moving into his prime years, it was just a disappointment kind of year after year. And it slid because Chicago fans loved him, and he wasn't held fully accountable for some of the regression. I think this regression bears some responsibility to why the Cubs fell off after 2017. But I don't think he personally was really held accountable. And I think all of that is landing at his feet now.
Bill Rogers here on Sports Talk Chicago. Bill, let's talk about that Cubs team. How surprising is their collapse today?
It's shocking. I mean, you can't quantify it or qualify it. And, I guess I was like everybody else. I got kind of fooled by the Ricketts commitment. There's no logical reason why they had to stop spending money on payroll. I mean, it's true that they did not get the best results from Theo Epstein's supersized baseball department. They invested a lot in front office salaries and failed to produce in drafts and in international signings. And they never really got a good tier of prospects coming behind those guys that came up 7 or 8 years ago. And, that led to the shortage. But you always had the ability to spend in free agency. I mean, I am stunned that they allowed all three of those guys to leave in Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez. I think it is unconscionable that they never redid Anthony Rizzo's contract to give him a deal that would have kept him in Chicago long term. And I'm not sure. I certainly didn't sit in on the negotiations. I don't know what Kris Bryant was asking. I don't know what Javi Baez was asking, and I don't know what the Cub doctors said about Anthony Rizzo's back. But Rizzo contributed so much early on in the rebuild of that, and he did so while playing under this team-friendly contract that he never made a public issue of. And it just seemed like he was, to the degree that an athlete making $15 million a year can be taken advantage of. I think the Cubs took advantage of Anthony Rizzo, and that's really disappointing to me.
Who's to blame for their current position today?
Well, I think it's mostly the lack of financial commitment from ownership and this feeling that you have to regain in the short run. They're kind of, to me, hiding behind the pandemic and those games played without fans in the stands. The way I looked at it, going back 15 months or however far we have to go to get to the start of this period of time for professional sports, the Ricketts had built up Wrigley Field. They have all the investment vehicles or revenue producing vehicles there around Wrigley Field. I would think they would want to keep the team strong to support it. And I just thought, okay, this is going to be a short-term period when owners in baseball, including the Ricketts, have to suck it up, and baseball won't be as great financially for owners during this pandemic until we get past this pandemic. But then, you look at appreciation of franchise values and just how great baseball has been for its owners. They're just in a period where they either have to take losses or profits not as great, depending on who you talk to, or this rough period. And then you get past it and get back to business as usual. Obviously, Tom Ricketts, and I suspect it all starts with his father in Omaha. I think it's always been a Ricketts family operation, and Tom has been the front man. But I think Joe probably has made the big financial decisions. And it seems to me like without much transparency, the Ricketts have just totally pulled back. And I am hearing from baseball people that this is going to go on for 3 or 4 years, that the Ricketts family has made an economic decision to make money off of the Cubs for 3 or 4 years without seriously investing in the payroll. And that is a bit of a shell game based on what Tom Ricketts always said. And I also think it feels to me like he's kind of gone into a cave and is no longer as visible as he was during the good days when he was always there. And I thought on the front end, when they did the rebuild after hiring Theo Epstein, I thought they were remarkably honest and candid in, telling fans to brace for some painful years, et cetera. But, it just seems to me that all of that has reversed. And, they're going to hand the town to the White Sox, which is really, really remarkable.
What was your reaction when you heard about the fact that they wouldn't invest in this team for 3 to 4 years? I mean, that's pretty shocking for me to hear personally, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know that.
Well, I'll say the same person who I heard that from told me 2 months ago, no matter where the Cubs are in standing, people with the Cubs were telling other teams that they were going to trade Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo. It didn't matter even if they were in first place.
Really?
So the same people that told me that are now saying 3 to 4 years of just looking to make money off the team, not worry about fielding a competitive team. And it's not shocking to me now that I saw what happened with Bryant, Baez, Rizzo. And by my math, I'm not sure enough has been made about this, but by my calculations, if you go back to the winter before this year with Yu Darvish, you look at Kyle Schwarber going off, being non-tendered, that whole group, by the time they got done at the trade deadline, trading 7 or 8 players in July, I had it at about $150 million off the payroll for 15 players in 8 or 9 months. I mean, that is epic. And so by the time I got to the end of July and saw that, the next piece doesn't really shock me. The 3 to 4 years, clearly the whole thing is turned on its head. And all of a sudden the Ricketts have become, the Wrigley family, selling the entertainment of Wrigley Field and all that without worrying about the competitiveness of the team. It's kind of back to the sad days of, but I was going to say the sad days of Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, but at least then there were star players. There just wasn't enough commitment around them to build a fully winning team, but at least they had some name value guys to go out and watch.
When do you think they'll be good again then?
I don't have the imagination. They got really, they used the draft smartly, but that was Theo Epstein's operation, not Jed Hoyer's. And they've lost a lot of front office brain drain in the last 5 years. And they don't have the commitment from ownership. So I love Nick Madrigal. If I were them, I would sign Nick Madrigal and Wilson Contreras to long-term contracts tomorrow and say we've got a couple of guys. I think Madrigal is going to win batting titles. And I think if you look at how he started his career, he's historically, he just might be the next Pete Rose. I mean, he's going to be that kind of a player. So I love those two guys, but Wilson's not that far away from leaving. And, Madrigal is not at a stage where he has to be paid much. So it's sort of a different deal, but I don't know if I was teams like the Dodgers and certainly the Cardinals and the Brewers, I would be having a party every day about what's not happening in Chicago.
Bill, let me ask you this. Let's move now to the White Sox. How surprising, how impressive has their season been?
Really impressive. And Jerry Reinsdorf's commitment, I think you can financially question the wisdom of going to get Craig Kimbrell when you already had Liam Hendricks. Some of their spending might even be over the top, but you have to give ownership credit for seeing the window and seizing it. And, I go back to after the 2019 season, it wasn't even clear they were going to keep Jose Abreu. If you remember, he filed for free agency. They made him a qualifying offer, but there was a serious thought that another team would scoop in and sign him away. And probably there's, a lot of teams that wish now they had done that they had been aggressively pursued Jose Abreu because, he is the real stuff. He's everything you want in a ball player, and he keeps driving in runs. And if sabermetrics devalues RBIs, he does a lot of other things that they value, including being a really tough out at the plate. And he's made himself into a pretty good defensive first baseman, at least an average one. And he's one of the best leaders in baseball. So I can't come up with really a negative about the White Sox. I mean, a lot of their bullpen arms didn't pitch well this year, guys that did pitch well last year. But that is somewhat the cyclical nature of relievers and short sample sizes, guys that come in and face, 3 guys at a time, and that makes or breaks their months and their seasons. But, I love the La Russa hiring when it was made. And I did not think, Rick Renteria would have been a great unknown as manager of this team because he never managed a team like it. And Tony has managed teams like this since the 1980s. And he, I think he's the exact right guy now to prepare the team as they, get to the playoffs with this big lead in the American League Central. They'll probably clinch mid-September and then spend the rest of the month resting guys, trying to get guys an edge to go into the playoffs. And, La Russa's the exact right guy. And that wasn't an easy hire to make. And it was a very unpopular hire with a lot of people. But, I think it was 100% the right move. And, I think we've seen it already. But if not, we'll certainly see it, I think, in October.
How far do you see him going this year?
I think the 3 best teams in baseball are the Dodgers, the Astros, and the White Sox. So, I think they're no guarantee. You look at all those Atlanta Brave teams that were really, truly complete teams, well managed, and they won 1 World Series in a run of 13 division championships. That tells you how fickle October can be. But I think the championship series should be them versus the Astros, with the winner playing the Dodgers in the World Series. And I think you could flip a coin in all those series and probably project it as well as you could, when we sit down, in a month with all of the final stats and, all the information we'll have. I think you could probably just flip a coin right now and be just as accurate.